Philippines to Washington.
We're just about to start now, okay? We got about 10 seconds. Welcome to Asian Review. I'm your host, Bill Sharp. Our show today is Bridging the Difference in Taiwan Society, and our guest joining us via telephone from Taipei, Taiwan, is Dr. Parris Chang, a professor emeritus, Pennsylvania State University. In addition to his academic life, Professor Chang currently is the president and founder of the Taiwan Institute for Political, Economic, and Strategic Studies. But his credentials go on from there. He was a Newsweek columnist for about 5 years. In addition, he served 4 terms in Taiwan's legislature, was a Deputy Secretary General of the National Security Council of Taiwan. And in addition, he was a trade representative to Bahrain. So we're very, very glad to have him with us, and welcome to Asia in Review.
Thank you, Bill. It's my pleasure.
Great. Well, as we were talking about, discussing just before the show started, the upcoming January 2016 presidential and legislative elections, what's your prediction?
Well, Taiwan is a democracy. I think our voters decide who's got to be our leaders. And so in the past 16 years, we see Taiwan, different party alternates in power. And in the past 8 years, the Kuomintang under President Ma Ying-jeou has not done very well. And I think at this time, our voter is going to vote the Kuomintang out of national power and bring in the opposition, DPP, Democratic Progressive Party, under Chairperson Tsai ing-wen, who is also the presidential candidate of the DPP. And in the past 6 to 8 months, she has steady leading in the poll. So people are not going to be surprised that when she is elected president of Taiwan next January.
So do you think that she will win the presidency and her party will also get the majority in the legislature?
I think so. The legislature is also a place where this time around the DPP will seek to the capture. In the past week or so, the Taiwan's media have been discussing a large list presented by different parties, and certainly the DPP's list look very good because it tried to get experts from the society and different kind of civil groups, the NGOs that represented, and people like that, because people feel that the legislature doesn't necessarily elect representatives from segments of the society. And so this, member at large is very important to have the representative of these civil groups. And DPP's list look very good, and therefore that would help DPP to win control of the legislature next year.
I think we should just add a note for the benefit of our viewers who might not understand. In the Taiwan voting system, when you vote 2 ballots. You vote for a party candidate and then for the party list, the at-large members. So when Professor Chang talks about the list, he's talking about actually the second ballot, which is a unique feature of Taiwan's electoral system. You know what, I'm curious about this. Got a lot of questions I'd like to ask you. I mean, given your expertise, you served in the legislature. You were the DPP representative in Washington for 4 or 5 years, as I recall. President Ma's trip to Singapore to meet Xi Jinping, and also Eric Chu's visit to Washington, did they help the Nationalist Party, the Kuomintang, at all in the polls?
Well, the meeting between President Ma and Chairman Xi Jinping of PRC was certainly historic. Historic in the sense that this is the first time in 66 years the leader of both the PRC in Beijing and also, well, the Kuomintang regime here in Taiwan, the first time in 66 years they met in Singapore the last week or so. And so there are lots of expectation that this meeting would result in, well, greater progress in the peace and development in the Taiwan Strait. But in the wake of the meeting, I think people here in Taiwan was disappointed because Taiwan President Ma didn't really put the right question to Xi Jinping. For example, people expect the President Ma to ask China why China continues to threat Taiwan. More than 1,500 missiles targeting Taiwan. Why China has to do so? If China talk about really peace and development in the Coast Strait. And Xi Jinping's answer was rather, I think, funny. He says, oh, the missile are not targeting at Taiwan.
That was a ridiculous answer, I agree.
Yeah. And President Ma said that, well, our opposition party is not happy that this missile are targeting at Taiwan. He talked about opposition party, saying opposition party make an issue of this missile. It wasn't the opposition party alone. I think all the people in Taiwan know that China continue to aim at Taiwan, threaten use of force. And not long ago, they even have a military exercise in Mongolia and using the presidential office where President Ma use that as a target for the military exercise. So anyway, that was very disappointing. And also, President Ma somehow failed to mention that he represents Republic of China in Taiwan, and he mainly talked about so-called One China 92 consensus. This is what Beijing wants. Right. Beijing his own agenda on Taiwan, but somehow President Ma gives the impression he's accommodating China because Beijing is trying to put Taiwan in a kind of sliding slope toward the terms accommodation that Beijing wants.
So, can I infer then that President Ma and didn't gain any more popular support from that meeting, and Eric Chu did not gather any more support for his run for the presidency?
That's correct. I think if we look at the poll in Taiwan, there are some expectation about the historical meeting, but in the aftermath of the meeting, people were disappointed. They feel that President Ma is tilting too much towards China, and it doesn't go over very well with the people. And so the poll, presidential poll for Eric Chu, who represents the Kuomintang, to run with the president, his poll has not been coming up. And his trip to Washington tried to convince Americans that the Kuomintang will be better political party running Taiwan has not been very persuasive to the observers and those people he met. I think the earlier trip by Dr. Tsai ing-wen
her
to
trip seems to have been
Washington,
a lot more successful.
more successful. I think her emphasis on maintaining the status quo in Taiwan Strait is well received in Washington, and more important than that also that Dr. Tsai talked about if she become president of Taiwan, she is going to be a dependable regional ally, security ally of the United States. She understands that, United States rebalancing strategy, pivot to Asia, need Taiwan. And she feels that, there are important things Taiwan could be helpful. And so she is well received in Washington. And so when President Chairman Xi Jinping visited Washington in the second half of September, he even tried to persuade President Obama to work together to keep Kuomintang in power in Taiwan next year. But I think United States government turned down that proposition.
Let me ask you this. I'm really curious about this. This election, it seems that Tsai ing-wen is making a real concerted effort to attract the younger voters in Taiwan and also to attract the swing voters. How is she doing with the young and with the swing voters?
Well, Taiwan's young people have been awakened in a way, just like the young people in Hong Kong, because last year we had a so-called sunflower movement.
Right.
The young people occupied the legislature because the Kuomintang tried to railway through a agreement with China, the so-called service trade agreement, which would open Taiwan to China's all sorts of investment, which would really deprive Taiwan young people's job opportunity. And that particular, I would say, peaceful uprising of our young people had a great impact on the election in Taiwan last November. We have a local election, so-called 9-in-1 election, and Kuomintang candidates suffer crushing defeat. That was a very clear manifestation of the young people not happy with Ma's policy, tilting too much towards China. And so the DPP certainly noticed this kind of a change in the political realignment in Taiwan. The political dynamics have changed, especially the young people have been waking up, and now they are very much concerned about the politics in Taiwan, and they are voting activity. They are going to turn out in large number to vote. When I was teaching at Penn State, I noticed that the young people, the college town, the voting turnout usually is very low, and it was same as in Taiwan until last year. And so this time around, January general election, president, legislature, the young people are going to turn out and vote against Kuomintang because they feel that the Kuomintang's economic policy tilting to China so much that the young people could not find jobs, and the wages for the young people are so low, and so the young people feel that they have to take their own future into their hands. They have to vote for their own future. So this is a very, very important new political dynamic in Taiwan's polity.
Good. We're going to take a break right here. We'll be right back. You're watching Asia in Review. I'm your host, Bill Sharp. Our guest today is Dr. Parris Chang, Professor Emeritus, Pennsylvania State University, also a former columnist for Newsweek Magazine, also a former member of the Taiwan legislature. and a person with great expertise, and he has a lot to tell us. So don't go away. We'll be right back. We have 1 minute, Dr. Chang.
Aloha. My name
Okay.
is Tim Shaw,
Well, how's it?
and I'm host of a show called Education Movers, Shakers, and Reformers. Each week, live streaming at noon on ThinkTech Hawaii, we interview people who have special insights into education, from early education through K-12, all the way through higher education and beyond. Both public and private are areas we're interested in. We dig deeper. We try to find out what it's really like to be involved in making change, advocating for it, how you reform, what people's philosophies are in reforming it. As I said, we're live streaming every Wednesday at noon on ThinkTech Hawaii. And later on, you can find these interviews on YouTube and on the Hawaii Educational Policy Center website. We hope you join us as many times as possible. Aloha.
Hello. Welcome back to Asian Review. I'm your host, Bill Sharp. Our guest today is Dr. Parris Chang, joining us from Taipei, Taiwan. Dr. Chang, are you there? Oh, we seem to have lost our guest here. Okay. Dr. Chang, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. I thought we lost you there for a second. Great. Well, before the break, we're talking about the role of the swing voters, the young, and as you say, the young are going to turn out en masse for this election. They seem to be very much involved, very interested. Tell me this, how would you characterize Tsai Ing-wen's leadership? What kind of adjectives could you assign to her leadership?
Well, this is the second time she represents the DPP to run for president. Now, the last time, 2012, she was rather new. And at that time, there are many issues. She wasn't so well prepared. And she was a political novice in the sense that, she has not been a very experienced politician. But this time around, she has really matured. And she is very well prepared for various issues facing Taiwan. In the past 4 years, she has been to every town, every corner of Taiwan. So she wants to understand what the Taiwanese people want. And so she is really a very astute politician now and leader. And she emphasized that, her important job is to unify Taiwanese society. I think Taiwan, in a way, has been polarized between the ruling class, the Kuomintang elite. They serve as a so-called comprador, the agent of the Chinese government in Beijing, and the liberalization of trade, investment, in the past several years have benefited the fat cats in Taiwan, but the ordinary people have not fared very well. So we have high unemployment, and people, especially young people, cannot find jobs. And so there have been considerable grievances against the Kuomintang, and this is why, they're going to lose the election next January. But Dr. Tsai, the presidential candidate and chairperson of the DPP, feel that, she needs to unify the nation. She feels that when Taiwan is polarized, that the Ma represent a small minority who continue to call for better relations with China and even unification with China. That's not what people want. But here in Taiwan, a small percentage, I would say maybe 5% of the people who want unification with China. A small minority, but they're very vocal. And so she feels that it will be very important for her as Taiwan's future leader to really unify the nation and create a Taiwan consensus. So she really looked ahead for Taiwan to become a much more active participant in the world scene. Taiwan, although it's an island, but it could not be just an island. It to be an active participant of international affairs, while Taiwan want to have trade, not just with China, but with all countries in the world, especially United States, Japan, EU, and also ASEAN. Currently, under Ma's government, Taiwan's put all the egg in one basket, that's Chinese market, and that's not good. And so I think she is trying to also enlighten and educate our people really to look beyond China and to the entire world.
You know, interesting that you mentioned a polarization of Taiwan society. And in her statements that she's made to the press or news releases, she emphasizes that one of her key goals as president will be to, to remove the polarization in Taiwan society. How is she going to do that?
Well, I think she is going to, for example, in her government, with meritocracy. As of now, in our government, our most important position are held by President Ma's inner circle. Those people, their family came over from China, so-called mainlanders.
Right.
And I think Dr. Tsai is going to emphasize meritocracy. It's the talents that count and not where you come from or your family for your family and all that. And this is one area she would do. And so in her inner circle, there are people who call mainlanders. She feels it's important to unify the nation. And also the public opinion polls by universities and by the NGO shows that more and more Taiwan, the people in Taiwan identify themselves as Taiwanese. And the second category is to say that I'm Taiwanese and I'm also Chinese. This is about 20-30%. But those who say I'm Taiwanese, almost 60%. And those who say I'm Chinese alone, less than 10%. And so you see the identity of the Taiwanese population is changing a great deal. When Chiang Kai-shek and his exile government came over to Taiwan in 1949, well, at that time, because of the education and everything, the government control information, people think that they are Chinese. And at that time, in schools and society, people are not allowed to speak our local language, our Taiwanese dialect.
Right.
But now, even the Taiwanese are spoken at the legislative end when our members of parliament ask questions to the government officials. They're using the local dialect. And if the government officials could not understand that they will be in trouble because they'll be publicly humiliated. Say, why are you born in Taiwan, have been here for so many decades and you don't speak the local language? So anyway, this new identity is very important, and more people identify as themselves as a Taiwanese. Even President Ma's government is China-friendly and tilting towards China. So this is a very important matter to know that more and more people think of themselves as a Taiwanese. And of course, our ancestors came over from China several centuries ago.
Right.
And because of war operation in China, they come over to Taiwan to look for a new life, so to speak. And now they have a new life here in Taiwan with democracy, human rights, and freedom. They are suddenly do not look towards living under the communist regime. And so you can understand how people feel about the importance of democracy and the right to choose a future.
Let me shift to another topic here.
Yes.
One that interests me quite a bit. And you spent sort of 4 terms in the legislature. I hear some people say that the Li-Fa-Yuan, the legislature in Taiwan, doesn't operate very efficiently. And some people say that the committee system is unfair. It's only a couple committees that really have power. And of course, the speaker has a lot of power, the Yuanzhang, the president of the legislature. How would you reform the legislature?
Well, our committee system has lots of problems. It has no seniority system. And each committee allows all the members of the legislature to come in and ask questions there. So it doesn't really inspire specialization, doesn't have a seniority system, and the important legislation were not fully debated in the committee system, unlike in the United States and other countries. And so every important legislative issue would go to the general meeting, and that could not really handle fully discuss and examine every article, every provision. So we have much to do with our committee system. Certainly, seniority system is very important, specialization is very important, and also our legislature still inherit previous political tradition, because under the Kuomintang for a long time, they try to keep the legislature powerless. It doesn't even have the power investigation, so many Americans would be surprised to know that, Taiwan's legislature cannot investigate things, and
Is that right?
witness,
I didn't realize that.
That's right, yeah. And the witness who come to the legislative and the committee to testify, he's not required to say everything, unlike in the United States. Well, if you say the 4 things, if you lied, you were not punishable. So this is kind of really the deficiency of our system, because previously the Kuomintang emphasized the executive power and tried to keep the legislative branch weak and impotent. So we have much to do to change and to improve our legislature. After having served 4 terms, 12 years in our parliament, we know what needs to be done.
So when you say the legislature in Taiwan doesn't have investigative power, it means it doesn't have its own investigative body. It has to rely on different ministries to do investigation, the special prosecutor or the legal Ministry of Justice, or it doesn't have its own investigators.
That's right. Well, we know that the check and balance are very important, and certainly Taiwan's Li-Fa-Yuan legislative end cannot really check and exercise the power of oversight of the government. And the government, would do things and which often see the legislative end as a kind of a rubber stamp. And so this is unfortunate.
We
have really much to improve.
Okay, we're going to have to take another break here. When we come back, I have another question or two I'd like to ask you about the legislature.
Okay.
You're watching Asia in Review. I'm your host, Bill Sharp. Our guest today is Dr. Parris Chang. Dr. Chang is joining us via telephone from Taiwan. He has a host of a whole lot of experience in international affairs, domestic affairs. He has been an advisor to the president for security affairs, as well as a member of the legislature. And he has a lot to share with us. So don't go away, and we'll be right back in about 1 minute.
Thank you.
Aloha,
Thank
my
you.
name is Kawi.
One more
Lucas.
minute here.
I am the host
Sure,
of Hawaii
no
is
problem.
My Mainland,
Yeah.
here every Friday on ThinkTech
Yeah,
Hawaii.
it's really
at
interesting
3
about the
p.m.
legislature. I hear it
I
said that
invite
President
people
Ma
who are
doesn't really
doing
understand
interesting
how the
and
legislature
inspiring
operates.
things in our community
Well,
to help us
that's
keep it
a
local
problem.
and keep it real.
Even though there was
Tune
a
in
time
any
that
Friday,
the
3
Kuomintang
p.m.
has almost
and also available on our YouTube channel and
75%.
Okay, we're coming, Dr. Chang, we're coming right back.
Of the
We're
coming right
member
back.
in the
Aloha.
legislative end, but still
Welcome
he
back
has
to
not
Asian
been able
Review.
to
I'm your
get
host.
his priority legislation adopted. And so his relation with the legislator are not good because he doesn't respect them and they don't like him, and therefore they take care of their own business, so to speak.
Interesting. Okay, maybe this is an unfair question, but let me ask it anyway. It's very unfortunate, I think, that the image that some people around the world have of Taiwan is based on fighting in the legislature, brawls breaking out. Now, I've heard that there is actually laws passed in Taiwan that would prohibit or prevent this kind of periodic fighting in the legislature, but they don't seem to be enforced. Is that true?
Well, this is the for example, opposition party. They're in a minority, and they found that the Kuomintang from time to time will engage in the tyranny of majority. They want wrong way through because they have the majority, and therefore the opposition have to resort to occupy the podium of the speaker to allow the legislative process to proceed. Because in Taiwan, it doesn't have the American system allowing the senator who is opposed to any given major issue to keep talking. What is the term you utilize that? Well, just keep talking. In the legislature, a senator can do that. In Taiwan, you can't do it. You allow 3 minutes, at most 5 minutes to talk, and then that's it. And so the minority cannot really engage in this check and balance, and they have to resort to, fighting. There's no fighting, but they occupy the podium and to block the proceeding, legislative proceeding. So that's a way of filibustering in a sense. They can't really engage in filibustering, but they could try to block the proceeding to go on because the Kuomintang doesn't listen to the view of the minority in opposition, and often the government, when they adopt a given important issue, they often fail to consult the people, consult different segments of society, such as the so-called Soviet trade agreement with China, because it would affect the different segments of Taiwanese society, especially small and medium businessmen. Yet the Ma Ying-jeou government signed the agreement with China and want the Kuomintang control the legislature to roll way through without previous agreement to examined and reviewed every article and every provision. So it got the people very angry.
Let's move on from here because time is flying away, and we've got about 10 minutes left here, and I got a whole lot of other stuff I'd like to ask you, and I think our audience would find it interesting. Let me see, where should we go from here? Wang Jinping. Now let's say, I'm just curious what your prediction is. Let's say the Kuomintang loses the presidency, okay, and it loses its majority in the legislature. Okay, Eric Chu will have to resign as party chair to take responsibility. Some people say Wang Jinping is very likely to be the next chair of the Kuomintang. If he is, do you think he will be? And if he is, would that usher in an era of more, how should I say, cooperation between the Kuomintang and the DPP?
Well, I think if Wang Jinping, the current speaker of our legislative and if he tried to run for the chairmanship of the party, I don't think he would get enough votes to be elected, because the structure, the power structure within the Kuomintang, you have more than one third of the Kuomintang members who can vote. They are the veterans, retired soldiers, and they are against the Taiwanese. So I talked earlier about the polarization, that the cleavages between the mainlanders, those retired soldiers, and the popular Taiwanese society is still very vast. And Wang Jinping comes from southern Taiwan, Kaohsiung. He's a Taiwanese. And many Kuomintang, those retired soldiers, would not vote for him.
Because they're from the mainland. Those retired veterans, the people in the veterans group, the influential people in the veterans groups are all originally from the mainland. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. And so they would not vote for him. And this is why I talk about the polarization of the Taiwan and Kuomintang. Those mainlanders continue to look towards China. They want so-called unification and making the ordinary people here in Taiwan very angry at them too.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't think Wang Jinping will be chairman. I understand that it is possible that President Ma may go back to become chairman of the Kuomintang. He wants that too, because he will continue to use that position as party chairman to engage in the interaction with China. So
to continue his legacy.
That's right.
To build his legacy. That's very interesting. I haven't heard that point of view before, but I think that makes a lot of sense. I think what you're saying is, Wang Jinping probably would have a hard time getting elected, because I'm sure Lian Zhan would use his influence against Wang Jinping, the veterans would. But I wonder if Lian Zhan is fading out, if he's fading into history.
I think his standing in Taiwan and also in Beijing has faded a great deal, because his son ran for the mayor of Taipei November last year, and did very poorly. So I think the influence and his political status in Taiwan and also in Beijing really has evaporated, and so he's a man of the past.
That issue of party assets always seems to come back and point at him too, doesn't it?
Yes, and I think next February, when the new legislative end convenes, the first act of the new legislative end is to disallow any political party to have really asset, because this is rather unusual for any democratic political party to have so much asset.
Right.
And the Kuomintang in the past used their party asset to buy votes. So it creates a lot of really inequality and really injustice in the election too. So now the time for change and time really for reform. So you are going to see the first thing the next February.
Well, let me ask you this too. We're down to about I think about our last 4 minutes here. Another personality, this is more from the DPP side, clearly more from the DPP side than the KMT side. Shi Mingde, what's his influence in society these days?
Well, he's also a man of the past. Shi Mingde, of course, one time was considered as a hero. He was in jail for 26 years and against Kuomintang, and so he was worshipped by many people. But I think he has not kept up, and so this time when he tried to run for president, he didn't even get enough signature to qualify him to be a presidential candidate. So, well, the heroes come and go, and I think he's already a man of the past.
He seems to have done a lot for Taiwan society in the past.
Indeed, yes. I also admire him at one time, and he could have been a very good politician, but he also been vanity and care too much about his own ego.
Oh, I see. Well, a lot of politicians have that problem, don't they, regardless of country?
Right, yeah.
Well, we're down to just the very end here, but as I said in the introduction, you did serve as a trade representative of Taiwan in Bahrain. So can you just very briefly give us some insight on Taiwan's perspective on the Middle East?
Oh, yes. I think we buy our oil mostly from the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Oman and UAE. And so it's important to keep good relation with the Middle East. And I know as my experience there that the Middle East, they look towards Taiwan, a place where it doesn't have so much natural resources. They've been doing well, so they know that Taiwan's experience is very useful for them. And so, anyway.
We have 1 minute to go here.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, that's very interesting. They do, those countries, the Gulf countries, they do value Taiwan's experience. That's good. I mean, I always feel that the countries around the world have so much to learn from Taiwan, both in political development and economic development. I'm not sure that Taiwan is as appreciated as much as it possibly should be.
Well, we can be a very active player in international community, and we would do that. We would try to keep a good relation with China, but we also keep good relation with United States, Japan, EU, and ASEAN. We could be a very constructive stakeholder in international society.
Great. I think we're going to have to stop it here because we're just out of time. Thank you very much for joining us today from Taiwan. It was great to benefit ourselves with your views and your expertise on both international politics and Taiwan domestic politics. And thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you right here next week at this time. We're looking forward to seeing you. Bye now.
Okay, come to observe our election next January. See Taiwan's democracy in action.
Okay.